Vanakkam, Jai Hind, Namaste everyone. Today on this auspicious day of Dashera 2023, we are launching our English version of our channel MMK The Eagle's View. Last Dashera 2022, we started our Tamil channel, and within a year we posted close to 350 plus videos. We got 1.2 crore of views and almost 10 million impressions, and we have closed down to 1,02,000 plus subscribers today. This is purely because of the support, the blessings and the encouragement you all gave us. So this channel is basically a people channel. All our team members, our friends, subscribers who all put their hard work behind the scenes, and we try to present the best facts possible. So this channel will exclusively cover geopolitics, strategy, security related to India and what affects the world together, various wars and certain historic perspectives as and when needed. So this channel will not be exclusively me specific. So there are a lot of team members, subject matter experts. So we have a subject matter expert on international relations. We have somebody will take care of geopolitics, security, and we will also interview various subject matter experts cutting across the field in India and abroad, so that we give unbiased, broader perspective of what things are. Unhyphenated is what we would like to quote. So we request you to provide the continuous support and encouragement till date you have provided us. That keeps us going, that keeps us motivating. So please do subscribe to our channel, pass it on to your friends and family, and do like a video if you really like it. So now today the geopolitical situation as such is more specific on the Indo Pacific region. So earlier we used to call it as Asia Pacific. Now very specifically it is Indo Pacific. So we have various global alliances like Quad, the BRI initiative of China, AUKUS, U2I2. So all this are specific to this particular area, because geopolitically this is what the superpowers and the developing nations are going to focus in the coming years. The reason behind this is 2/3 of the population lives here. Almost 65% in excess of goods which flow, the trade which happens through this area. And we have a lot of upcoming superpowers, aspiring superpowers like China, who want to assert themselves in this area. And we have the existing superpower, the US, which is forming various alliances globally and regionally to dominate this particular area. So when we speak about this, we can always go back and revisit what our ancestors have done, what our great kings have done at those point of time. So we would like to highlight you about a great dynasty which ruled not only India, it went all the way till the South Asian countries between 7 and 12 Common Era century. So that 400 plus of years, one kingdom which robustly not only defended itself, which also expanded, as I told, from peninsular India all the way till Cambodia. That's the Chola dynasty. So Chola dynasty has always focused on the Indo Pacific region, and they were dominating power in the Indian Ocean region. So in today's context, Indian Navy, which is a very strategic and offensive force, which we are trying to develop, be it Vikramaditya or INS Vikrant, the naval fleet which we are going to develop is an aspiration that we want to dominate IOR strategically, and we want to extend our presence in all the way till the Pacific. So that's a long-term ambition. Today we will not be able to visualize it, but that's the way the country is progressing today. Similarly, China, which is officially the biggest naval fleet in the world today, it has already crossed US. It has got 500 plus warships, though they don't have that much of a power in terms of an aircraft carrier. China also aspires to dominate the Indian Ocean region, thereby dominating the world. So we have countries like France and UK who are trying to have a bilateral relation with India, because we are one of a very vital and important place geographically, culturally and economically in this place. So without India, no other country can actually devise a Indo-Pacific strategy. So France, we have seen the submarine deal. So they want to collaborate with us. It's just not a business. They want to assert themselves in Indian Ocean region. UK is trying to have a bilateral relation with us. Quad, we already have it. Japan, Australia, India and US. So similarly, a Gulf Quad is already formed, which is shaping up now, U2, I2. So all these alliances are on one side, and China is continuously expanding its presence in the Indian Ocean region, specifically with their BRI projects, the Belt and Road Initiative. And in the current session last week, Xi Jinping on the BRI 3 summit has announced excess of 850 lakh crore of investment. That is again basically to dominate this area. So each nation has been adopting a certain policy. So let's see how this compares with the Chola dynasty. So Cholas started in a place called Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which is a very dry arid area which had very less water resources. So they built up their base there, and then they started expanding northwards all the way till the current Uttarakhand and Chhattisgarh. And they have defeated various other kings and dynasties which were ruling India at that medieval era. And they focused on expanding in the peninsular area, which was actually called as Chola Mandalam, which later British as such they renamed it as Coromandel. Coromandel is not the right terminology we should be using. It is actually the Chola Mandal, because that's where they dominated and ruled this place for more than 400 years. So from there they have invaded Sri Lanka. So they established their base in the northern part of Sri Lanka, which is currently we call it as Elam in the current scenario, Sri Lanka, which we see. So they have dominated, they have won over all the small kings who were ruling the Maldives Islands, which we see today. They have overpowered Car Nicobar and Andaman Islands. So then comes Indonesia, Sumatra, today Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, and they have went all the way to establish their embassies in China. So if you see that map, they have taken the naval route. So initially they came up till, even they crossed Vindhyas, they came up till the northern part of India. So the Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the Ganga basically means when you had built that big temple in Tanjore, Tamil Nadu. So they wanted to purify that place with the holy water of Ganga, but the ruler who was ruling that place at that point of time, he didn't oblige. So Cholas went and fought a war with them. It was a symbolic war just to show the might of there. They didn't capture any territory, they didn't occupy or they didn't topple the king. The war was won, the kingdom was handed over back to the king, and then they took the Ganga Jal and came all the way back. So that's why the place was named as Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Puram is nothing but the location, dynasty. So when we look at Cholas, they would have had an option. They had a very, very strong army. So they should have gone all the way till crossed the Khyber-Borne Pass, moved towards the Central Asia and possibly the Gulf. Why did they take the naval route? So they were clear in their strategy that the geopolitics, dominance, if a kingdom wants to dominate, and the kingdom has to expand. So in a way they followed Chanakya Nidhi, which said you can't be keeping, you can't keep defending yourself. So either you conquer it or else somebody else will conquer you. So that's a strategy. So that's why they took a sea route. So they developed a mighty naval force, and those times that was the most strongest naval force of that particular century. It was closed down to not only 1 century, 3 centuries. The fundamental reason behind this, Cholas believed whoever dominates the Indian Ocean region will dominate the world. Now let's look at the Cholas military structure. So when we all speak about the Indian military structure, there is a general perception that we inherited everything from the British. But even before, hundreds of years before the British came in, they had a structure. Now I'll read out the structure, you can correlate with the current structure of the Indian Armed Forces. So the king, the emperor was the Cholas. So the Cholas had various successors. Raja Chola, his son Rajendra Chola. So the king was always the supreme commander of armed forces. Under him there was a naval force and there was an army. And then he had a set of spies. the intelligence network under him. So they were directly reporting to the king, and he had his own set of guards, which in Tamil they used to call as Velayatkal. They are nothing but, they were not the servants, they were the emperor's personal bodyguards. So 4 divisions, one is a full-time naval force, an army, and then an intelligence wing, and then his own bodyguards, which today we call it as presidential bodyguards or SPG. So now when we look at army has been divided into Sena. Sena is a Tamil word which is nothing but Sena. So he had 3 Senas, and he had 1 intelligence wing, which I already told you, and he had 1 bodyguards for himself. So the bodyguard's role was to protect the royal family, the king and his family. Now under Sena, so there is, Sena is nothing but the army. Under Sena, they had something called Thalam. Thalam, you can take it as a command. Today we have Northern Command, Eastern Command, Western Command. So Thalam, we have a very big, broader fighting structure. With it, he had Nadappu, Payanam and Kadagam. Now, Kadag is basically the sea part of it. So within the country, within the army, he had a small naval force within the army as such. Now when we look at Thalam, it is further classified as Ani, and Ani is the basic fighting force, which we can call it as a corps or a division. Each Ani had a structure which is similar to the modern day one. So what does Ani has? Ani has 1 elephant unit. Today we can call it as a tank regiment or a tank force. So each elephant unit had around 300 odd elephants, and each elephant had 1 driver, which is the elephant tamer, and then it had 3 forces which basically had that swords with them. Then we have 1 cavalry unit which comprised of around 1000 to 1500, and then we had 1 infantry unit which has got around 3000 soldiers. So those soldiers were classified as heavy infantry and light infantry. Heavy infantry are those people who had heavier swords, heavier armors, but they were less mobile. So they were in the front line basically to defend them. And then we had the light armor infantry, which was basically a very swift mobile force, very versatile, very fast. So they had lighter weapons and lighter armor. So that's how they have structured their thing. So this Ani is the basic fighting unit. If you notice it clearly, it is just not infantry, it's an integrated battle group. It has cavalry, it has elephants, and it has infantry as such. So 3 Anis make a Thalam. So Ani was commanded by Anibadi, Thalam was commanded by a Talabadi. So the nomenclature, rank structure will always look like what we have today, which we think that we inherited from British, but our ancestors were much way ahead in terms of a very structured military at those point of time. Then we have within the Ani, within the Thalam, we have something called Usi Padai. Usi Padai is a very specialized force. It's something like NSG or a SPG or a Paracommando special forces. So those are trained soldiers who were tasked to operate beyond the enemy lines. So when they decide to attack the kingdom, this people, the Usi Padai, basically the commando force, they assess the situation, they work in sync with the intelligence. Whenever they find the enemy's guard is low, they go and take on the leadership of the enemy's army, the top commanders. Then we had Talapadai. Talapadai is basically again a commando force, but they are there to launch, defend. Their job is not to go on offensive operations, their job is to go on defensive operations. If some other army launches a guerrilla attack on them, so this is the force which goes and defends them. Then we have Marudvarani, which is nothing but the medical team. The medical team had around 200 to 300 trained doctors who then use Siddha, Varma and Ayurveda. So they had an inventory of all these essential medicines, right from blood clot, excessive bleeding, to how to arrest bleeding, wartime injuries, casualties, how to address them, makeshift stretchers, everything was there. And there was a manual, detailed manual of how to execute their job in case of a war scenario. Then we have Villalar Ani, which is the bowmen, those people who can do that bow and arrow. So these add again 2 divisions. One is a long bowman, who can launch a arrow at a longer distance, and then the shorter one which basically takes care of 50 to 100 meters. So this is the structure of their army. Now when you come to Navy similarly had such a very powerful this thing. So they call it as Dharani. It's a bigger one. Dharani is something the world. So Dharani was given to in today's concept, we can call it as a destroyer. Then we have Lula. Lulas are nothing but the today's modern days corvettes. Then we have Vajra, which is the frigate. Then we have Tirusadai. It is basically a multi-role ship which is very very heavily armored. It can take on multiple targets. It can mobilize the infantry. It can take the forces in. And then we have Akramandam, which is basically the royal quarters. When the king travels, he basically travels in that. It is a royal quarters, a royal camp of the emperor. Then we have Neelamandam. This is basically to carry the ministers, diplomats, officials of the kingdom. Then we have Sarpamugam. So which is basically, we know it's a snake. So it's a snake-headed one. It is basically used in rivers. It doesn't go to the sea. It's not a maritime one. It's used in the fresh waters, rivers. And then we have Endram. Endram is basically a smaller ship. It today is like the fast boats which we use on operations. And then we have Kalam. Kalam is a large vessel. It's essentially not a military vessel. Kalam is a large 3-mast vessel which can travel in any direction. So one direction the wind pushes, and then the mast, the naval people who knows the subject know it very much. And then they went all the way something called Thoni, which is a very small circular hollow one made of fiber and wood. So this is basically used in a place in a fast river stream where there are a lot of stones. So this avoids the breakage. But when they organized this navy, so what is the role of Chola's navy? What did they want? Their objective was to dominate the Indian Ocean region, thereby dominating the world. The second, they all were very very clear that they have to be economically mightier, not only militarily. So their focus was on economics, which means trade and commerce. Third, they want to spread their culture, the religion. So when we say what did Cholas exactly do, they were Shaivites who worshipped Lord Shiva. So one example you can see is those who call the Ram Setu story, the Ramayana story as myth. There is an inscription of Chola in today's Sri Lanka, in the northern part of Sri Lanka, where they went, they dominated it, and then they wrote an inscription in Tamil which read, "This is the Sena of Ram which came down to Lanka and burned the kingdom here." So this was exactly the Ramayana. We don't know which yuga it was, but this is what exactly Ramayana tells us. So in the 11th century, Cholas did the same, and then they inscripted in the name of Rama, our Lord Rama. They were strong Shaivites, they were Shiva worshippers, but they did accommodate all possible worship. That's the way the religious harmony was maintained. So trade and commerce, thereby economics, culture and military. These were the 3 pillars which they focused, and this was the 3 undisputed pillars which Cholas took over. Now when they went into maritime one, the first thing comes is how to build a ship. So how do we build a ship? So they had institutions, they had detailed manuals. Those inscripts are still there in the government library in Chennai, and you can find these inscripts in Sri Lanka. This has been a documented history in various South Asian nations like Malaysia, Indonesia. So they had a clear manual of how to build a ship. So those days the metallurgy was not there, they couldn't make iron ships, but they did make wooden ships. So what trees should be used, when it has to be cut, which location the trees has to be picked up, which is basically the Western Ghats and Vindhyas, how much time it has to be cured, what is the curing process, how to cut it, the design of the ship, and then finally the building part of it. So they had trained carpenters, and they did, in fact they were in touch with the Syrian and Arab merchant at those point of time. They did study their naval structure, and finally they decided not to use a single piece of iron in it, which is basically the nails, because it would lead to corrosion. So everything was documented, how to build a ship, and there were special institutions, the training colleges, which picked up the right people for this job. They were trained in this, and that's how they were able to build ships at a faster rate. Second comes the navigation part of it. How do you navigate? We don't have a GPS, we don't have a Garmin at those times. So how do they navigate? So they analyzed, they researched and found the sea turtles, which is a very slow moving animal inside the water. It is not as powerful as a big fish like shark. So it takes the shortest possible route. So Cholas identified this. Say they use sea turtles to navigate from India to Sri Lanka to Maldives, today's Malacca Strait, Malaysia, Indonesia, Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, and all the way till Cambodia. So they navigated purely by using turtles and also the sky navigation. So that's why they were able to reach places. When we speak about marine exploration, we always speak about Galileo, and then we speak about the Western sailors who came into India, Columbus, but we forgot that we were much ahead in terms of time. Now third thing is, what does the ship do? So their ships had capacity to take the IBGs, the integrated battle groups, the Ani and Kalam, which we say. So when we take, how do we transport a bigger animal like elephant and horse? So they had a medical team which did a research. When these animals were taken on the ship, as and when needed to invade another kingdom, they were sedated naturally. During the course of time, if an elephant goes mad, the ship will eventually break and the sailors will lose their life. So they had a process of sedating that massive animals, and by the time they reached the shore, we know how difficult a beach landing operation is. We have seen a movie called Saving Private Ryan. In the first scene, the Allied forces, when they land up in the beach of Normandy, you can see how difficult this a military operation is. So these animals were tuned to do this. And when they went and invaded the country, it is not that they occupied and they destroyed. When the Mughals came in, they destroyed temples, we all are aware. The Britishers did considerable amount of damage, but they never did that mistake. They went, they invaded, they had the trade deal, they had the taxation agreement set off, they took the cost of war. Definitely any army would do that, but they handed over the kingdom back to the respective kings, and they had propagated religion. So that's why you could see Shiva temples all the way till China. There is a documented evidence of Shiva temple in China, in the modern China today, even prior to the Ming dynasty. So nobody was touched, nobody was hurt. They had a very legal and a very righteous way of doing a war. And now comes the trade part of it. So Chinese were producing considerable amount of goods, basically textiles, and Arabs were also trading. So the portion which connects Arab and China was obviously India. So he had a harbour in Pumbugar today. When you all visit Tamil Nadu, you can go and visit that place, a wonderful place, historical one, you need to visit that. So they understood the very importance of this merchant ports. So they had multiple merchant ports in Tamil Nadu and all the way till Kerala. So this acted as a transshipment hub. So they charged a certain amount of money for all this transshipment, and today what we call it as bulk breaking. So this were all done in Tamil Nadu and they charged the money. That's how the government earned the revenue. Second way of is to protect the maritime route. So all the naval ships were guarded. Almost 30% of the Chinese ships at that time were sunk or either invaded by pirates. So those pirates were dealt by the Chola Navy, the mightiest navy. To do that, what they did is they had special underwater diving commandos. So how do I identify the manpower? They went back and people, fishermen, folks who go do deep sea diving and go and pick up pearls. So those kids were identified, those young men were recruited, and they were trained in the fresh water. Now how do you train them in the fresh water? So a considerable amount of salt was added in a swimming pool kind of a thing which they carved out of a river Kaveri, and this deep sea divers were trained heavily. So whenever there is a ship which hasn't paid the dues to the Chola Empire, the the transshipment and the protection tax, they were broken, hammered by this special forces. The second way they destroyed a ship is to use a catapult action and to throw a fireball. Modern day we call it as a flamethrower or a cannon. So those was used and catapult action was used, and they used to break the enemy ships. So all the ships, merchant ships which were passing through the Indian Ocean region, the Malacca Straits, were paying a protection duty or a protection service charge to the Cholas. That's how they were able to become one of the wealthiest economies of those times. So now to summarize this, what we see today as a military structure, which we still believe that we inherit from British, it's not the case. We were way ahead of times. And the organization structure today we see, should we theaterize, should we not theaterize? There are a lot of thought process and things in it. But what we ultimately forget here is the strategic side of it. Cholas always dominated the 400 years of Chola dynasty, which ruled with the mightiest dynasty of those times, were focusing on their naval might. A naval force is not a defensive force, it's an offensive force. We are very clear. So 4 principles and 4 lessons we need to learn from them. If you are not supposed to be conquered, then you have to conquer. So you need to assert yourself economically, militarily, and by having a very strong naval force, trade dominance, and the maritime security. These are the 4 areas where Cholas dominated. And 5th is spread of culture, which is soft power, the way we took yoga to the world globally. So these lessons are already there, and these kings are not celebrated. The northern part of India doesn't know much of the southern dynasties, vice versa. So it's time for us to revisit our history and learn from it. So today, in the coming 5 decades or so, our foreign policy, which is more specific to the western, northern and the eastern borders, now has to look at the peninsula, because the Cholas, when they looked at the geopolitics, they believed, which is a fact, when there's Himalayas and formation and story, the country doesn't start in Kashmir and end in Kanyakumari. It's the other way. The country has actually started in Kanyakumari. So when you look at Kanyakumari as a start point and then look at India, then you see our border perception, the way we have been perceiving things are different. So this is the way the future strategies has to be devised. These factors cannot be forgotten. We will come out with a detailed story of a maritime force as such of Cholas and various other dynasties. But hope this video you found it to be useful. All these facts have been derived from authentic sources. If at all there is some factual differences, a wrong facts code, please do comment and we will try to correct it. Hope you like this video. I am leaving the responsibility and as a brotherly request to all of you to like, subscribe and share this channel. Thank you everyone. Jai Hind.